All right, welcome. This is Unit 7. And we're going to give you some notes on page 1 and start you off with some of the information you already know a little bit, but just kind of make sure we're pretty good on it. So we're going to be looking at the signs of the trig functions. And when I mean signs, I mean positive and negative. I don't mean some of the stuff you did in the unit circle, like the 1/2 or 3 or 2. We're just concentrating on if I give you the tangent in the second quadrant, is that going to be positive or negative? Alright, so let's go back to some of the stuff we did in the last unit and algebra. In the first quadrant, the x's and y's are both positive. In the second quadrant, x is negative, y is positive. Third quadrant, they are both negative. In the fourth quadrant, I have a positive and a negative. Now, just a reminder, when you gave me information on the test and stuff for the last unit, cosine is the x value and sine is the y for every single one of these. Okay. Alright, so when we start talking about these fractions, it doesn't matter what the fraction is or the ratio or anything like that. Cosine in the first quadrant is positive, which would mean when I flip it and I get the secant is also positive. Sine in the first quadrant is positive, and so cosecant is also. Tangent, since it's sine over cosine, and it's a positive over positive, is positive, and that means cotangent is also. So anytime we're talking about any of these 6 functions in the first quadrant, anything in the first quadrant is a positive. Now in the second quadrant, cosine is a negative, that means secant is also a negative because I'm just flipping the fractions. Sine is a positive, that means cosecant is a positive. Tangent, which would be sine over cosine, which means y over x, positive over negative is a negative, which means cotangent is also negative. So in the second quadrant, these are the only positive values. So I'm talking about a positive fraction or positive ratio, sine and cosecant. So in the third quadrant, we have negative, negative, which means secant is also a negative, and cosecant is also negative. But tangent, just kidding, is sine over cosine, so a negative over negative, which means the fraction ultimately is a positive. And that means tangent. So in the third quadrant, it means these are your positives. Last one here in the fourth quadrant. So secant, positive, sine and cosecant are negatives. Tangent, which would be a negative over a positive, so that would be a negative, and cotangent is negative. So these are my only positives. Alright, so when you go to answer these, I'm really kind of focused on my quadrant, and so I'm saying all positives, sine, tangent, and cosine. So sine positive, which means cosecant is, and the third tangent is positive, and so cotangent, and cosine is positive, so is secant. So there's different acronyms that come out. The one I've heard a lot is all students take calculus, or if you reverse it, people came up with ACT sucks. Whatever it is, just to help you. So what you're going to do is say, like here, what is the value of sine in the third quadrant? So you can either look up here and say sine is negative, or say, well, tangent is positive. That means everything else, tangent and cotangent are positive, so sine must be a negative. Number 2, what is the value of cosine in the fourth? Fourth, cosine is automatically positive. So go through this list, try a few, and then pause it here and double check. And I'll get these filled in for you. Alright, tangent in the fourth quadrant is a negative. Cotangent in the third quadrant is a positive. Cosine in the third is a negative. Cotangent in the fourth is a negative. 7. Secant in the third is a negative, and a cosecant in the second is a positive. All right, the next page, on page 2. All right, let -3 and -7 be the terminal side of theta. Find the values of the 6 trig functions, which means, just like you did in your test yesterday, tell me for this problem, what's the fraction for sine, what's the fraction for cosine, what's the fraction for tangent, what's the for cosecant, for secant, and for cotangent. Okay, so if I give you an ordered pair, start from the origin, go left that about that, go down that much, and now you're going to have a right triangle. And you're always going to make the right triangle with the x-axis. You're going to, the angle, right angle will always sit over here. It might go up, but it's going to sit here, or it's going to go over to the positive side and go up or go down. Now -3 for x, -7 for y. You want to do the Pythagorean theorem. So 7 squared is 49. -3 squared is 9. Add them together, you get 58. Of course, you want to reduce if possible, and you can't reduce 58. Alright, so then you're just going to do SOHCAHTOA and fill in the information. So, sine is, so theta is sitting here with the origin. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so -7 over root 58. Of course, rationalize. 58 over 58. Now cosecant, we'll flip which either one's easier. The first one seems easier because you don't have to rationalize again. Take cosine adjacent over hypotenuse, -3 over root 58. And -3 root 58 over 58. Secant is just root 58 over -3. Now, I don't care where the negative sits, if it sits with the positive, if it sits with the top, if it sits with the bottom, or just in front of the fraction, it's all the same. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, so it's -7 over -3, so the two negatives cancel out. And we talked about in the third quadrant, tangent is positive anyway, so that fraction should be ultimately positive. Okay, so even if you do the two negatives, make sure you cancel them out. Okay. Now, the last one for today is example 2. We're going to be given the same thing, sine, cos, tan, cotangent, secant, and cosecant. Yeah. Alright, I already know tangent is -5 over 4, so I already know cotangent, which is good. Now, tangent we know is opposite over adjacent, but I have to figure out which quadrant it's in. And I have a negative, so that definitely helps out. So, my A, S, T, C. Now, since tangent was negative, for sure, since I can't be here, it can't be negative in the first quadrant. And also, because tangent was positive in the third, it can't be in the third. Now, when they give you these, you'll cancel down 2 quadrants with the first one and then clarify which one of the other 2 are left is going to work for this. Now, on this one, it says cosine is bigger than 2 or greater than 0. So that means if it's greater, it has to be a positive value. So in this, cosine is a positive, so it's not going to be in the second, it ends up being here in the fourth. So this means you draw the radius out and you make the triangle with the x-axis. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, so 5 and 4. And so I have a negative, and when I go to the right, that's a positive, and when I go down, negative. So the negative has to sit here with the 5. So, do Pythagorean theorem. This should end up being the square root of 41. And fill in the rest of your ratios. Oh my god, it's loud. Alright, this should end up being -5 root 41 over 41 and root 41 over -5. Go through these, double check them. I'm just kind of writing down the answers here. 41 and root 41 over 4. Okay, so that's it for today. Your homework, the pages are a little bit backwards. Page 4 is next. Just flip it over. Page 3 is your homework. Page 3, just flip page 4 over. It got put together a little backwards. Page 3, page 3, due Monday. So practice making the triangles, the X and the Y. So just page 3, 1 through 6, due for Monday. Talk to you later. Bye.